Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ship through the viewport of the New Horizon and felt his heart pound against his ribs like a trapped bird. The vessel was 3 times larger than his exploration ship and shaped like a twisted spear made of dark metal that seemed to drink in the light from nearby stars. Strange symbols glowed along its hull in patterns that hurt to look at for too long, and Jake had to force himself to keep watching as the alien craft moved closer with impossible grace. The New Horizon had been humanity's proudest achievement when it launched from Earth orbit 6 months ago. Jake remembered the cheering crowds and the speeches about mankind taking its first real steps into the galaxy. Now his ship felt like a child's toy floating next to a battleship. The alien vessel had appeared without warning near Alpha Centauri and disabled every system on the New Horizon with a single pulse of energy that made the air taste like copper and lightning. "Captain Morrison of the human vessel," came a voice that seemed to speak directly inside his head without using his ears at all. The words felt cold and sharp like pieces of broken glass sliding through his thoughts. "You will prepare to receive our representative aboard your primitive craft." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew of 12 brave men and women who had volunteered for this historic mission. Navigator Pete Jackson was trying to restart the navigation computers with hands that shook just a little. Communications Officer Sarah Williams kept pressing buttons on her console even though nothing worked anymore. Chief Engineer Amy Chen was already heading toward the airlock with a worried expression on her face. They were the best humanity had to offer, and they looked as scared as Jake felt. The airlock hissed open, and something walked through that made Jake take a step backward before he could stop himself. The creature stood 8 feet tall on 4 legs that bent the wrong way like a spider's limbs. Its body was covered in dark green armor that looked like it had grown rather than been made, and its head was a triangle filled with too many eyes that glowed red in the dim light. 2 smaller arms ending in claws hung from its chest and moved constantly as if they had minds of their own. "I am Enforcer Kethvar of the Veltar," the creature said, without moving what might have been its mouth. "You are Captain Morrison of the species called human." Jake tried to make his voice sound steady and mostly succeeded. "Yes, I am Captain Morrison representing the United Earth government. We come in peace, seeking contact with other intelligent life." The alien's eyes all blinked at once in what might have been amusement. "Peace is not your choice to make, small human. Your species has been detected entering space without permission from the Galactic Dominion. This is a violation of the established order that has maintained peace for 10,000 years. We didn't know there were rules," Jake said. "This is our first time leaving our home system." "Ignorance does not excuse violation," Kethvar replied. "The Dominion consists of 12 great species who have earned their place through superior evolution technology and wisdom. All lesser beings must submit to our authority or face extinction. Your species has been evaluated and classified as servants suitable for manual labor and resource extraction." Jake felt anger rising in his chest like hot metal. "We're not servants to anyone. Humans are free people who govern themselves." The alien made a sound like breaking glass that might have been laughter. "Freedom is a luxury granted only to those strong enough to claim it. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are crude, and your biology is weak. You cannot survive in space without artificial protection, you have no psychic abilities, and your lifespans are laughably short. Even your young species designation indicates your inferiority." "What exactly are you demanding?" Jake asked through gritted teeth. "The Dominion grants your species 1 standard galactic year to comply with integration protocols. You will surrender all military vessels and weapons to Veltar enforcement units. Your population will be relocated to designated colony worlds, where you will provide labor and resources as tribute. Your leaders will be replaced by Dominion administrators who understand proper governance. Compliance ensures your survival as a servant species. And if we refuse?" Jake asked, already knowing the answer would be terrible. Refusal results in complete sterilization of your species and colonization of your worlds by more worthy beings. This is not negotiation, human. This is notification of reality. Your primitive minds may require time to accept the inevitable. The alien turned to leave, then stopped. To demonstrate the futility of resistance, observe. Kethavar raised one clawed hand, and Jake felt the ship shudder around them. Emergency lights began flashing, and Amy Chen's voice came over the comm system reporting massive system failures throughout. The New Horizon. Your vessel's reactor has been reduced to 10% efficiency and will remain so until I choose otherwise, the alien said. Your weapon systems have been permanently disabled, and your navigation computers have been corrupted. You exist now only because the Dominion chooses to allow it. Remember this lesson when you report to your leaders. The creature walked back through the airlock without another word, and Jake watched helplessly as the alien ship vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving the New Horizon crippled and alone in the vast darkness between stars. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks on emergency power, and every day Jake thought about the alien's words and felt sick with fear and rage. When the New Horizon finally limped into Earth orbit, Jake Morrison carried the worst news in human history. Humanity had 1 year to choose between slavery and extinction, and there seemed to be no third option available to a young species that had just learned it was alone no longer. The emergency session of the United Earth government lasted 18 hours and ended with a decision that would have seemed impossible just days before. President Kevin Walsh stood before the combined representatives of every nation on Earth and announced that humanity would not submit to alien slavery. The vote had been close, but Admiral Lisa Carter's passionate speech about human dignity had tipped the balance toward defiance rather than surrender. Admiral Carter walked through the bustling corridors of the newly expanded Space Defense Headquarters in Colorado, where every room buzzed with desperate activity. Engineers worked around the clock designing new weapons, while scientists studied the limited data from Jake Morrison's encounter with the alien enforcer. The smell of coffee and determination filled the air as humanity's best minds raced against an impossible deadline. Dr. Amy Chen had barely slept in the 3 weeks since returning from the disastrous First Contact mission. Her xenobiology lab was filled with holographic displays showing what little they knew about Dominion technology and biology. The alien enforcer, Kethavar, had revealed crucial information without realizing it, and Amy was determined to find every weakness in their superior technology. Their energy weapons are incredibly powerful, but they seem to rely entirely on directed energy and plasma streams, Amy explained to a room full of military officers and weapons designers. They disabled our ship with some kind of electromagnetic pulse, but they didn't destroy us outright. This suggests their weapons are designed for capture and control rather than total destruction. Commander Ryan Torres studied the tactical reports with growing excitement. If they're used to fighting enemies who surrender quickly, then they might not be prepared for sustained resistance. Their tactics seem focused on psychological warfare and displays of overwhelming power rather than actual combat experience. Orbital shipyards above Earth had been expanded with desperate speed, using materials stripped from asteroid mining operations that worked without rest. Every available space dock was building warships using designs that combined human engineering with educated guesses about how to counter alien technology. The new vessels looked nothing like the exploration ships humanity had built before with angular armor plating and weapon systems designed for close-range fighting. Engineer Pete Jackson had been promoted to Chief of Advanced Weapons Development and spent his days testing radical new concepts that would have been considered impossible before the alien ultimatum. His latest project involved mounting nuclear warheads on fast attack craft designed to ram enemy vessels at close range. The idea horrified traditional military strategists, but Pete argued that desperate times required desperate measures. The aliens expect us to fight like civilized beings with rules and honor codes, Pete explained while showing off his latest suicide bomber design. They've been in control for 10,000 years, which means they've never faced an enemy willing to die for victory. We can use that against them. Pilot Sarah Williams had been selected to lead the new fighter pilot training program and pushed her students harder than any human had ever been pushed before. The training involved simulated combat against alien ships using computer models based on the Veltar Enforcer vessel. Most pilots failed the program, but those who survived became something new and dangerous. "Forget everything you know about air combat," Sarah told her latest class of pilot candidates. "These aliens move in 3 dimensions without regard for up or down, and their weapons can kill you from distances we can barely imagine. Speed and unpredictability are your only advantages, so we're going to make you faster and more unpredictable than anything they've ever seen," Captain Morrison had been given command of a special reconnaissance unit tasked with gathering intelligence about Dominion forces in nearby star systems. His modified ship, the new Defiance, was equipped with the best stealth technology humanity could build, and weapons designed specifically for hit-and-run attacks. Every mission was a gamble, but each successful scouting run provided invaluable data about alien patrol patterns and weaknesses. The global mobilization effort transformed human civilization in ways that would have taken decades under normal circumstances. Every major corporation retooled their factories for military production, while universities focused their research on weapons technology and space combat tactics. Children learned about alien biology in school, while their parents worked double shifts building the fleet that might save humanity from extinction. Admiral Carter coordinated the massive effort from her command center, where status reports flowed in from around the globe and beyond. Mining operations in the asteroid belt provided raw materials, while construction crews worked in rotating shifts to build defensive platforms around Earth and Mars. The progress was impressive, but Carter knew it might not be enough against an enemy with 10,000 years of technological advancement. Dr. Chen made a breakthrough while studying the electromagnetic pulse that had disabled the New Horizon during first contact. The alien weapon was incredibly sophisticated, but it seemed designed to shut down systems rather than destroy them completely. This suggested that Dominion forces preferred to capture enemy technology intact rather than obliterate it completely. "They're conservationists," Amy explained during a strategy meeting with the top military commanders. "They want to preserve useful resources, including enemy ships and personnel. This means their weapons and tactics are designed for subjugation rather than extermination. We can exploit this by building ships designed to keep fighting even after taking what they consider disabling damage." Commander Torres implemented new training protocols that pushed human soldiers beyond what alien observers might consider possible limits. Humans could survive in environments that would kill other species and fight effectively while injured in ways that would incapacitate alien warriors. The training was brutal, but it produced soldiers who could continue fighting long after their alien enemies expected them to surrender. The countdown continued with Earth's population, living under the shadow of approaching doom while working frantically to prepare for a war they were expected to lose. Public morale remained surprisingly high as people found purpose in the desperate struggle for survival. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds, and the alien ultimatum had awakened something fierce and unbreakable in the human spirit. As the deadline approached, Admiral Carter reviewed the final preparations with a mixture of pride and terror. Humanity had built a fleet of over 200 warships equipped with weapons designed specifically for fighting technologically superior enemies. Thousands of pilots had been trained for suicide missions, while millions of ground troops prepared for the possibility of planetary invasion. The preparations were complete, but nobody knew if they would be enough against an enemy that considered humans barely more advanced than animals. Fleet Admiral Zek Thor of the aquatic Merkesh species floated in his command tank aboard the battlecruiser Tide of Judgment and reviewed the tactical display with mild interest. 30 ships of the Dominion Enforcement Fleet moved through space toward the primitive human home system in perfect formation. The operation was classified as routine pacification, with minimal resistance expected from the newly discovered servant species. The humans had been given a full standard year to accept their proper place in the galactic order. But intelligence. Reports suggested they were attempting some form of futile resistance instead of sensible surrender. Zekthor found this amusing rather than concerning, since no species in recorded history had successfully opposed Dominion authority once proper. Force was applied. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Defiance and watched the enemy fleet approach on long-range sensors. 30 alien warships moved toward Earth in a formation that spoke of absolute confidence and 10,000 years of unchallenged dominance. Each enemy vessel was larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever built, but Carter felt no fear, only cold determination. "All units, this is Admiral Carter," she broadcast to the human fleet scattered throughout the outer solar system. "The enemy expects us to fight by their rules and surrender when they demonstrate superior firepower. They are about to learn that humans do not surrender, and we do not follow anyone else's rules." Captain Morrison commanded a squadron of modified civilian ships that had been converted into nuclear missile platforms. His vessels looked like ordinary cargo haulers and mining craft, but each one carried enough atomic warheads to crack a moon. The plan was insane by any reasonable military standard, but Morrison had learned that insane plans sometimes worked when fighting superior enemies. The first contact occurred near Jupiter's orbit, where human patrol ships engaged the advancing Dominion fleet. Fleet Admiral Zekthor expected immediate surrender once the aliens demonstrated their technological superiority, but the human ships refused to retreat even when their shields failed and their hulls began to burn. The humans kept fighting until their ships were completely destroyed, and this confused the Dominion commander greatly. Commander Ryan Torres led the first boarding action in galactic history when his assault ship rammed through the damaged shields of a Dominion destroyer. His Marines fought their way through alien corridors using weapons and tactics that horrified the enemy crew. The aliens were used to civilized warfare with established rules about treatment of prisoners and limits on acceptable violence. Torres and his men showed no such restraint as they carved through the alien ship like a blade through silk. The enemy crew had superior technology and greater individual strength, but they had never faced opponents who kept fighting with broken bones and bleeding wounds. Human Marines continued their assault even when mortally wounded, and this level of determination was beyond Dominion comprehension. Dr. Amy Chen coordinated electronic warfare attacks from her command center on the Defiance using computer viruses, designed to exploit weaknesses in alien communication systems. The Dominion used quantum entanglement networks that were incredibly secure, but they had become overconfident after millennia without serious opposition. Amy's virus programs slipped through their defenses like water through cracks in stone. The alien command structure began to collapse as ships lost contact with their fleet. Admiral and individual captains were forced to make independent decisions. The Dominion military had not trained for this situation since their enemies always fought predictable battles with clear chains of command that could be targeted and destroyed. Engineer Pete Jackson launched his suicide bomber squadron when the main alien battle line entered the asteroid belt. His pilots flew modified fighters loaded with nuclear warheads directly at enemy vessels while broadcasting final messages to their families on Earth. The alien defenders tried to intercept the incoming missiles, but they were not prepared for human pilots who treated their own lives as expendable ammunition. The first nuclear detonation against a Dominion shield came as a complete shock to Fleet Admiral Zekthor, who had never seen weapons of such primitive design used with such devastating effect. The crude atomic warheads punched through energy barriers designed to deflect sophisticated particle beams and plasma cannons. 3 alien ships were destroyed in the first wave, and panic began to spread through the Dominion fleet. Pilot Sarah Williams led her fighter squadron in attacks that violated every principle of space combat known to galactic civilization. Her pilots flew in swarm formations that ignored traditional concepts of honor and individual glory, focusing instead on maximum damage to enemy vessels. They targeted weapons systems and engines rather than attempting glorious single combat with enemy fighters. The human fighters were slower and less advanced than their alien counterparts, but they used tactics that seemed random and chaotic to Dominion pilots trained in formal combat procedures. Human squadrons would scatter when attacked, then reform in unexpected patterns that confused enemy targeting systems and made coordinated defense impossible. Captain Morrison's cargo ship squadron approached the alien battle line while broadcasting false surrender signals that made the enemy lower their guard. The Dominion ships moved to accept the human surrender according to established protocols, but Morrison's vessels suddenly accelerated to ramming speed with their nuclear payloads armed for detonation. The sight of enemy ships deliberately destroying themselves to damage Dominion vessels was beyond Fleet Admiral Zek Thor's ability to comprehend. Rational beings preserved their lives and surrendered when defeat became inevitable, but these humans seemed to prefer death over submission. The tactical situation deteriorated rapidly as human suicide attacks eliminated ship after ship from the Dominion fleet. Commander Torres completed his boarding action by detonating explosive charges throughout the alien destroyer, while his surviving Marines fought their way to escape pods. The human assault had cost 23 lives, but resulted in the complete destruction of a vessel that should have been invulnerable to primitive attackers. Dr. Chen's electronic warfare attacks reached their peak effectiveness as alien ships began firing on each other due to corrupted identification systems. The Dominion fleet's sophisticated technology had become a liability when human computer viruses turned their own weapons against them. Ships that had been allies for centuries suddenly appeared as enemies on tactical displays. The battle reached its climax when Admiral Carter ordered her remaining ships to concentrate all firepower on the alien flagship. The Tide of Judgment was the most powerful vessel in the Dominion fleet, but sustained assault by human weapons gradually wore down its defenses. Fleet Admiral Zek Thor found himself facing a choice between honorable death and shameful retreat. So, Marrakesh commander chose retreat and ordered his surviving ships to withdraw from the system. 15 Dominion vessels had been destroyed or severely damaged by an enemy that should have surrendered without resistance. The humans had lost twice as many ships, but they celebrated the battle as a victory rather than mourning their losses. News of the impossible human victory spread through subspace communication networks faster than Fleet Admiral Zek Thor could return to Dominion space with his report of failure. The news traveled through the galaxy like wildfire carried by subspace communication networks that had been designed to maintain Dominion control, but now spread word of impossible human victory to every inhabited system. On the mining world of Kethmaran, the reptilian Krevan workers stopped their labor and looked up at the stars with something they had not felt in 3 centuries of slavery hope. Forge Master Skelthan had been born into captivity like his parents and grandparents before him. But the stories of the old days when his people ruled their own destiny had been passed down through whispered conversations in the deep mines. The tale of humans who refused to surrender and somehow defeated a Dominion enforcement fleet seemed too incredible to believe, but the evidence was undeniable. High Counselor Veltrak of the Veltar stood before the emergency assembly on Nexus Prime and felt something he had never experienced in his 1,000-year lifespan: uncertainty. The Dominion Council consisted of representatives from 12 ancient species who had maintained galactic order through overwhelming technological superiority and the universal acceptance that resistance was futile. "The humans have done the impossible," Veltrak announced to the gathered council members. "They have defeated our enforcement fleet and inspired rebellion throughout our territory. Reports are coming in from dozens of worlds where servant species are refusing orders and sabotaging production facilities. The very foundation of our authority has been challenged." On the ethereal world of Andris, the Othmari began their own form of resistance using psychic abilities that had been turned toward forced labor for generations. Their ancient minds could touch the quantum communication networks that connected Dominion space, and now they used this gift to spread confusion and false information through enemy command systems. Spirit Walker Nethari floated above the crystal, gardens where her people had been forced to enhance Dominion technology with their mental powers. The humans had shown that victory was possible even against impossible odds, and the Othmari decided to reclaim their dignity through subtle warfare that the physical species could never detect or counter. Captain Jake Morrison found himself promoted to admiral and placed in command of Earth's first diplomatic mission to contact potential allies throughout the galaxy. His ship, the New Horizon, had been rebuilt with captured Dominion technology and equipped with translation systems designed to communicate with species that had been silent for millennia. The first contact came from an unexpected source when a coded transmission reached Earth containing detailed intelligence about Dominion fleet movements and military installations. The message was signed by something calling itself the Liberation Network and included coordinates for a secret meeting in the neutral zone between galactic territories. Dr. Amy Chen worked frantically to decode alien technologies captured during the battle while dealing with a constant stream of requests for assistance from species attempting their own rebellions. Her laboratory had become a center for scientific exchange, as former enemies of the Dominion shared their knowledge in hopes of accelerating their mutual liberation. Commander Ryan Torres trained the first mixed units of human soldiers and alien, volunteers who had escaped from Dominion-controlled worlds. The cooperation was difficult at first, since different species had completely different concepts of tactics and honor, but gradually they learned to fight as unified forces. General Mike Rodriguez was assigned to coordinate with resistance cells throughout the galaxy using communication methods that avoided Dominion detection. His background in special operations made him ideal for the new role of supporting insurgent activities on worlds that had been peaceful for thousands of years. The Krevan Rebellion began on 17 mining worlds simultaneously when Forge, Master Skelthon, broadcast a signal that had been prepared in secret for months. Centuries of suppressed rage exploded into violence as reptilian workers turned their mining equipment into weapons and seized control of facilities that produced materials essential to Dominion technology. Communications Officer Lisa Park established contact with dozens of species who had been classified as extinct by Dominion records but had actually survived in hidden colonies and remote systems. These forgotten peoples emerged from hiding to offer assistance to the growing resistance movement that promised freedom for all thinking beings. The economic impact of widespread rebellion became apparent within weeks as production quotas failed throughout Dominion space. The ancient empire had grown dependent on slave labor to maintain their technological advantages and lifestyle, but now their subjects refused to cooperate with their own oppression. Engineer Pete Jackson led teams of human technicians who worked with alien specialists to develop new weapons and technologies that combined the best features of multiple civilizations. The exchange of scientific knowledge accelerated innovation in ways that benefited all participants in the growing alliance against Dominion rule. On Nexus Prime, the Dominion Council faced unprecedented challenges as their authority crumbled on world after world. Some council members argued for immediate overwhelming retaliation against Earth and its allies, while others suggested negotiation with the rebel leaders who seemed capable of reasonable discussion. High Counselor Veldtrak advocated for the complete destruction of human civilization as an example to other potential rebels, but found himself opposed by council members who recognized that genocide would only inspire greater resistance. The debate continued for days while the rebellion spread to systems that had been loyal for millennia. Pilot Sarah Williams commanded the first integrated fighter squadron with pilots from 6 different species learning to work together despite completely different flying styles and tactical traditions. The diversity of approaches made the unit unpredictable and effective against Dominion forces trained to fight conventional enemies. The Othmari psychic attacks reached new levels of sophistication as Spirit Walker Nethari coordinated mental assaults that disrupted Dominion command networks across multiple star systems simultaneously. The ethereal beings had become invisible saboteurs whose activities could not be detected by physical sensors or conventional security measures. Admiral Morrison's diplomatic missions established formal contact with the Liberation Network and discovered that the resistance movement included species from every level of Dominion society. Some rebels were recent additions to the Empire, while others had been planning rebellion for thousands of years while waiting for the right moment to strike. The turning point came when 3 Dominion member species formally declared independence and offered military support to the human-led alliance. The ancient unity that had maintained galactic peace began to fracture as even former rulers recognized that the old system was no longer sustainable in the face of universal resistance. Dr. Chen's scientific exchanges produced breakthrough discoveries that revolutionized galactic technology by combining human innovation with alien knowledge that had been restricted for millennia. The rapid advancement showed that cooperation produced better results than the hierarchical system that had stifled progress for thousands of years. The Dominion faced a choice between adapting to a new galaxy where all species were equal or fighting, a war that would destroy the civilization they had spent so long building. The human example had proven that freedom was stronger than oppression, and now every thinking being in the galaxy knew that liberation was possible if they were willing to fight for it. Supreme War Commander Kex Azul of the crystalline Sithar materialized his battle form aboard the massive dreadnought Crystal of Dominion and surveyed the greatest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 1,000 ships of various classes stretched across space in formations that had been perfected through millennia of conquest and control. This fleet represented the combined might of the Dominion gathered for the final solution to the human problem. The rebellion had spread far beyond what anyone thought possible with over 200 worlds, now in open revolt against Dominion authority. The humans had somehow inspired a level of resistance that threatened the foundation of galactic civilization. Kex Azul had been given unlimited authority to crush this uprising using any means necessary, including the complete sterilization of entire star systems. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the battleship Terra's Defiance and watched the mixed fleet that had assembled to defend freedom throughout the galaxy. Human vessels fought alongside ships from dozens of species who had thrown off the chains of oppression. The fleet was smaller than the approaching Dominion armada, but it carried the hopes of every thinking being who dreamed of liberation. The crystalline commander had never faced an enemy willing to accept massive casualties for strategic advantage. Dominion warfare followed established patterns with clear objectives and predictable outcomes. The humans and their allies seemed to operate under completely different principles that prioritized ultimate victory over immediate survival. Dr. Amy Chen coordinated the deployment of her newest creation, a computer virus designed to target the quantum cores that powered Dominion command ships. The virus had been developed with assistance from Othmari psychics, who understood the mental patterns used in alien technology. Once activated, the program would spread through enemy networks and cause critical system failures at the worst possible moment. Commander Ryan Torres led the first wave of multi-species assault teams trained to board and capture enemy vessels, using tactics that combined human aggression with alien abilities. His soldiers included Kree-Van warriors whose reptilian strength could tear through metal armor and Othmari spirits who could disable enemy crew members with targeted psychic attacks. The battle began in the Proxima system, where Dominion forces encountered the outer defenses of the Liberation Fleet. Kex Azul expected rapid victory against the inferior numbers and primitive technology, but found himself facing enemies who refused to retreat even when their situations became hopeless. General Mike Rodriguez commanded ground forces on 17 worlds, simultaneously using communication networks that had been established by the Liberation Network. His troops were a mixture of humans and alien volunteers who shared tactical information across multiple star systems in real time. The coordination allowed rebel forces to support each other despite being separated by vast distances. Engineer Pete Jackson had developed his most ambitious weapon, yet a ship capable of generating artificial gravitational fields that could tear apart enemy vessels from the inside. The technology combined human engineering with scientific principles discovered by liberated alien scientists who had been forced to work on Dominion projects for centuries. Pilot Sarah Williams led fighter squadrons that included pilots from 12 different species, each bringing unique abilities and perspectives to combat operations. The diversity made her units unpredictable and adaptable in ways that confused Dominion tactical computers designed to counter conventional attack patterns. The first major engagement occurred when human suicide bombers penetrated the Dominion battle line and detonated their payloads inside the shields of enemy dreadnoughts. Supreme War Commander Kex Azul watched in shock as vessels that should have been invulnerable were destroyed by attackers who treated their own lives as ammunition in the cause of freedom. Communications Officer Lisa Park maintained contact with resistance cells throughout Dominion space who launched coordinated attacks on military installations and supply depots. The simultaneous uprisings stretched enemy forces thin and prevented them from concentrating their full power against the Liberation Fleet. Dr. Chen's virus activated during the height of battle, causing chaos throughout the Dominion command structure, as ships lost contact with their controllers and began operating independently. The sophisticated technology that had given the aliens their advantage became a liability when human programs turned their own systems against them. Commander Torres led boarding actions that resulted in the capture of intact Dominion vessels, along with their advanced weapons and defensive systems. His assault teams fought with a ferocity that terrified alien crew members who had never encountered enemies willing to continue fighting while severely wounded. The turning point came when Engineer Jackson's gravitational weapon targeted the Dominion flagship, causing massive structural damage that left the Crystal of Dominion crippled and vulnerable. Supreme War Commander Kex Azul found himself trapped aboard a dying ship while his fleet fell apart around him. General Rodriguez's ground forces achieved breakthrough victories on key worlds that served as supply bases for the Dominion military. The loss of these facilities meant that enemy ships could not be repaired or resupplied during the extended battle that human tactics had forced upon them. Admiral Morrison coordinated the final assault that concentrated all available firepower against the damaged Dominion flagship. The combined weapons of dozens of species working together proved more effective than any single technology, no matter how advanced it might be. Pilot Williams led the fighter attack that penetrated the Crystal of Dominion's failing defenses and delivered the killing blow that destroyed both the ship and its commander. The death of Supreme War Commander Kex Azul sent shockwaves through the remaining Dominion forces who had believed their leader was invincible. The battle ended with the complete collapse of Dominion resistance as surviving ships fled in all directions without coordination or leadership. The Liberation Fleet had suffered heavy casualties, but achieved total victory against an enemy that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Dr. Chen's teams immediately began studying captured technology, while rebel forces moved to occupy strategic systems throughout former Dominion space. The ancient empire that had seemed eternal had been destroyed by species they had dismissed as inferior servants, unworthy of consideration. The war was over, but the real challenge of building a new galactic civilization based on freedom and cooperation, rather than domination and fear, was just beginning. The humans had proven that liberation was possible, but now they had to help create something better than what they had destroyed. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Dominion, and Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime, where representatives from over 300 species gathered to celebrate the anniversary of galactic liberation. The former seat of oppression had been transformed into a symbol of freedom, where every thinking being had an equal voice, regardless of their technology or physical capabilities. The Galactic Liberation Council met in continuous session as new. species emerged from hiding or threw off the remnants of authoritarian rule throughout the galaxy. Each world brought unique perspectives and capabilities that enriched the growing civilization built on principles of cooperation rather than domination. The diversity that the Dominion had tried to suppress became the foundation of unprecedented progress. Dr. Amy Chen walked through laboratories where human scientists worked alongside alien researchers, sharing knowledge that had been restricted for millennia. The exchange of ideas produced breakthrough discoveries almost daily as different ways of thinking combined to solve problems that had seemed impossible. Medical techniques from one species cured diseases that plagued others, while technological innovations spread rapidly through cooperative networks. The transformation extended far beyond science and technology as cultures that had been enemies for thousands of years learned to appreciate their differences rather than fight over them. Art galleries displayed works that combined human creativity with alien sensibilities, producing beauty that no single species could have imagined alone. Commander Ryan Torres had been promoted to general and now oversaw integrated defense forces that protected the new galactic civilization against threats both internal and external. Former Dominion loyalists still controlled some remote systems, and pirate fleets tried to exploit the transition period, but the unified response of free peoples proved more effective than the old empire's authoritarian methods. Engineer Pete Jackson directed the Galactic Engineering Consortium, where breakthrough technologies emerged from the combination of human innovation with alien knowledge. Transportation systems that could move between star systems in hours rather than days revolutionized commerce and communication. Energy generation methods that had been theoretical concepts became practical solutions that provided abundance for every inhabited world. The economic transformation was as dramatic as the political changes, as trade networks developed based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Species that had been forced to provide tribute to Dominion overlords now traded freely with partners throughout the galaxy. The flow of goods and ideas accelerated innovation while raising living standards for billions of sentient beings. Pilot. Sarah Williams commanded the first truly integrated starfighter squadron with pilots from dozens of different worlds, learning to work together despite completely different flying traditions and tactical approaches. The unit had become a symbol of cooperation that inspired similar integration efforts throughout the galaxy. General Mike Rodriguez coordinated with planetary governments to establish educational exchange programs that allowed young beings from different species to learn about other cultures and ways of thinking. The programs were designed to prevent the kind of isolation and ignorance that had allowed the Dominion to maintain control through fear and prejudice. Communications Officer. Lisa Park managed the vast network that kept the scattered worlds of the galaxy in constant contact with each other. The technology used quantum entanglement principles discovered by combining human physics with alien mathematics to create instantaneous communication across any distance. The challenges were significant as some former Dominion species struggled to adapt to a galaxy where they were no longer automatically superior to everyone else. Re-education programs helped former oppressors understand the benefits of equality, while support systems assisted former slaves in developing the confidence to participate fully in galactic civilization. Dr. Chen's scientific exchanges had produced medical advances that extended lifespans and improved quality of life for every known species. Diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia were eliminated through cooperative research that combined the biological knowledge of multiple worlds. Mental health treatments helped former slaves overcome generations of psychological conditioning. The Krevan had emerged as natural leaders in mining and engineering operations, using their physical strength and technical knowledge to build infrastructure projects throughout liberated space. Forge Master Skelthon had become a prominent advocate for worker rights, ensuring that no species would ever again be forced into labor without compensation or choice. The Othmari provided spiritual guidance and psychological counseling that helped many species cope with the transition from oppression to freedom. Their psychic abilities were used to facilitate communication between species with completely different thought patterns and to heal mental trauma left by centuries of authoritarian rule. Engineer Jackson's latest project involved constructing massive space habitats that could support multiple species in customized environments. The stations served as meeting places where beings with incompatible atmospheric or gravitational needs could interact safely while maintaining their natural living conditions. The anniversary celebration featured performances that showcased the artistic achievements of the new galactic civilization. Music that combined human instruments with alien harmonics created sounds that had never existed before. Dance performances included movements from dozens of different cultures, creating new forms of expression that transcended species boundaries. Admiral Morrison delivered the keynote address reflecting on how far the galaxy had come since that first encounter with Enforcer Kethvar near Alpha Centauri. He spoke about the courage of ordinary beings who chose freedom over safety and the power of cooperation to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. The speech emphasized that victory had come not from superior weapons or ancient wisdom, but from the simple recognition that all thinking beings deserved dignity and self-determination. The human refusal to accept slavery had inspired others to claim their own freedom, and now the galaxy was better than anyone had dared to imagine. General Torres announced the formation of new exploration fleets that would venture into uncharted regions of the galaxy, carrying the message of liberation to any civilizations they might encounter. The ships would be crewed by volunteers from every species working together to extend the principles of freedom and cooperation to the furthest reaches of space. As the celebration continued into the night, Admiral Morrison stood on an observation deck looking out at the stars that no longer seemed cold and hostile, but full of infinite possibility. The galaxy had been transformed by beings who refused to accept that oppression was inevitable, and now every world offered hope for an even better future. The greatest achievement was not the technology or the wealth or even the peace, but the simple fact that different species had learned to see each other as partners rather than threats. Humanity's defiance had indeed changed the fate of the galaxy by proving that freedom was stronger than fear and cooperation more powerful than conquest. The universe had become a place where every thinking being could reach for the stars knowing they would not reach alone.